So today we're going to continue reading To Kill a Mockingbird. And when we stopped, we were at the bottom of page 139 in the PDF. Don't forget to sign in, guys. Remember, Jim and Scout had gotten into a fight, and Atticus comes in, and the last thing that was said, Atticus asked who started the fight. And Scout says Jim did. He was trying to tell me what to do. I don't have to mind him now, do I? She's feeling like everybody is telling her what to do, okay? So we'll start at the top of the page, 140. Ahmed Hossein, would you read, please?
Atticus smiled. Let's leave it at this. You mind Jim whenever he can make you. Fair enough. Aunt Alexandra was present but silent, and when she went down the hall with Atticus, we heard her say just one of the things I have telling you about, a phrase that united us again. Ours were adjoining rooms. As I shut the door between them, Jim said, "Night, Scout, night." I murdered, begging my way across the room to turn the lights. As I passed the bed, I stepped on something warm, resilient and rather smooth. It was not quite like hard rubber, and I had the sensation that it was alive. I also heard it move. I switched on the lights and looked at the floor by the bed. Whatever I had stepped on was gone. I tapped on Jim's door. What he said. How does a snake feel? Sort of rough, cold, dusty. Why, I think there's one under my bed. Can you come look? Are you being funny? Jim opened the door. He was in his pajama bottoms. I noticed, not without satisfaction, that the mark of my knuckles was still on his mouth. When he saw I mean what I said, he said, "If you think I'm gonna put my leg down to a snake, you have got another thing coming. Hold on a minute." He went to the kitchen and fetched the broom. "You better get on the bed," he said. "You reckon it's really one?" I asked. This was an occasion. Our houses had no cellars. They were built on stone blocks a few feet above the ground, and the entry of reptiles was not unknown, but was commonplace. Miss Rachel Havard's excuse for a glass of neat whiskey every morning was that she never got over the fright of finding a razor coil in her bedroom closet on her washing when she went to hang up negligee.
Negligee.
Jim made a tentative swipe under the bed. I looked over the foot to see if a snake would come out. None did. Jim made a deeper swipe.
All right, thank you, Ahmed.
You're welcome.
All right, let's go back to the top of the page. Atticus smiled and he tells Scout, let's leave it at this. You mind Jim whenever he can make you. Fair enough? Atticus knows that Jim can never make Scout obey him, okay? So that's why he makes the deal with Scout. Let's leave it at this. You mind Jim whenever he can make you. He knows that Jim will never be able to force Scout to listen to him. And she goes on to say that Aunt Alexandra was present, but she was silent. And she goes down the hallway murmuring, just one of the things I've been telling you about, okay? So then we come to the point where Scout is in her room and she steps on something and she thinks it's a snake. So she's forced to go to Jim's room to ask him to come with her to look. And he goes to the kitchen and he gets the broom. All right. So she tells him to look under the bed. And he made a tentative swipe under the bed. She says, I looked over the foot to see if a snake would come out, but none did. And then Jim made a deeper swipe. Okay. Afaduta, would you read, please?
Yes, miss, but when, from where?
Right here, babe. See? Do snakes grunt? The top of page 141.
The snakes grunt. It ain't a snake, Jim said. It's somebody. Suddenly, a filthy brown package shoot from under the bed. Jim raised the broom and missed Dell's head by an inch when it appeared. God Almighty! Jim's voice was reverent. We watched Dell emerge by degrees. He was a tight fit. He stood up and eased his shoulders, turned his feet in their ankle sockets, rubbed the back of his neck. His circulation restored. He said, "Hey, Jim, peti- petitioned,
Petitioned.
petitioned God again." I was speechless. "I am about to burst," said Dell. "Got any tweet?" Sorry.
It's okay.
Showing his front teeth, as was his costume. I finally found my voice. How'd you get here? By an evolved route refreshed by food. Dell recited this narrative, having been bound in a chain and left to die in the basement. There were basements in uh, Meridian
Meridian.
by his new father, who disliked him and secretly kept alive on raw field bees by a passing farmer who heard his cries for help. The good man poked a bushel pod by pod through the ventilator. Dill worked himself free by pulling the chains from the wall. Still in rest mankles, he wandered 2 miles out of the meridian, where he discovered a small animal show and was immediately engaged to watch the camp. He traveled with the show all over Mississippi until his infallible sense of direction told him he was in a Abbott County, Alabama, just across the river from Macomb. He walked the rest of the way.
Okay,
How'd you get here?
Offit, 1 second, babe. All right, this entire paragraph is coming from Deal's imagination. Okay, he's telling them that his new father, who disliked him, secretly kept him alive by giving him raw field peas. And a passing farmer who heard his cries for help came and rescued him. Okay, and then he goes on to say how he pulled himself free of chains. He had been tied to the wall in wrist manacles. And then he wandered 2 miles out of Meridian, where he discovered a small animal show and he was hired to wash the camel. Then he says he traveled with the show all over Mississippi until his sense of direction told him he was in Alabama, just across the river from Macomb, and he walked the rest of the way. All of this is Deal's imagination. It did not really happen. Okay? Go ahead, Austin. Sorry.
How'd you get here? Asked Jim. He had taken $13 from his mother's purse, caught the 9 o'clock from Meridian, and got off a Makeup Junction. He had walked 10 or 11 of the 14 miles to Macomb. Off the highway in the scrub bushes, lest the authorities be seeking him, and had ridden the remainder of the way clinging to the backboard of a cotton wagon. He had been under the bed for 2 hours, he thought. He had heard us in the dining room, and the clink of forks and plates nearly drove him crazy. He thought Jim and I would never go to bed. He had considered emerging and helping me beat Jim, as Jim had grown far taller, but he knew Mr. Finch would break it up soon. So he thought it best to stay where he was. He was worn out, dirty beyond belief, and home. They must now, they must now know you're here," said Jim. "We'll know if they're looking for you. Think they're still searching? All the picture shows in Meridian, they'll grind. You ought let your mother know where you are," said Jim. "You ought let her know you're here." Dill's eyes flickered at Jim, and Jim looked at the floor. Then he rose and broke the remaining code of our childhood. He went out of the room and down the hall. "Atticus," his voice was distant. "Can you come here for a minute, sir?" Beneath its sweat-streaked dirt, Dill's face went white. I felt sick. Atticus was in the doorway. He came to the middle of the room and stood with his hands in his pockets, looking down at Dill. I finally found my voice. "It's okay, Dill. When he wants you to know something, he will tell you." Dill looked at me. "I mean, it's all right," I said. You know he wouldn't bother you. You know you ain't scared of Atticus." "I'm not scared," Dill muttered. "Just hungry, I'll bet." Atticus' voice had its unusual pleasant dryness. "Scout, we can do better than a pan of cold corn bread, can't we? We filled this fellow up, and when I get back, we'll see what we can see. Mr. Finch, don't tell Aunt Rachel. Don't make me go back, please, sir. I'll run off again." "Oh, son," said Atticus, "no, nobody's about to make you go anywhere but to bed pretty soon. I'm just over to tell Miss Rachel you're here and ask her if you could spend the night with us. You'd like that, wouldn't you? And for goodness sake, put some of the county back where it belongs. The soil erosion's bad enough as it is."
Thank you, Hoffman. All right, so we know that Deal has run away from home. He's now at the Finches, and when Atticus finds out, he tells him not to worry. He tells Scout to get him something to eat more than cornbread. And Deal begs him, please don't tell his Aunt Rachel, okay? Don't make him go back. He said he'd run away again. So Atticus tells him not to worry. No one's going to make him go back. The only place he's going pretty soon is to bed. He said, but I'm just going to go over and tell Miss Rachel that you are here and ask her if you can spend the night with us. And in the end, he says, and for goodness sake, put some of the county back where it belongs. The soil erosion's bad enough as it is. This only means he had a lot of dirt on his shoes and he had trampled it inside the house. Okay, Hannah Yasser, would you read, please? Hannah, do you have a question?
Yes, of course. Yes, I had a question.
Okay.
I don't understand, how did they get in the house?
I'm not sure exactly how he got into the house. It doesn't say, but I guess he snuck through a window probably.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you so much, Miss
And
May.
the part about him running away is true, but he did not join an animal show or that sort of thing. And his new father did not lock him up in the basement, okay? The only thing that happened, Deal ran away from home and made it to Macomb.
Yes, I see. Thank you, Miss Lynn.
You're welcome. All right, so we know that Deal has run away from home. He's now at the Finches, and when Atticus finds out, he tells him not to worry. No one's going to make him go back. He said, put some of the county back where it belongs. The soil erosion's bad enough as it is.
Must I read?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Dill stared at my father's retreating figure. He's trying to be funny, I said. He means take a bath. See there? I told you he wouldn't bother you. Jim was standing in a corner of the room, looking like the traitor he was. Dill I had to tell him. He said, "You can't run 300 miles off without your mother knowing." We left him without a word. Dill ate and ate and ate. He hadn't eaten since last night. He used all his money for a ticket, boarded the train as he had done many times, coolly chatted with the conductor to whom Dill was a familiar sight. But he had not the nerve to invoke the rule on small children traveling a distance alone. If you've lost your money, the conductor will lend you enough for dinner, and your father will pay him back at the end of the line. Dill made his way through the leftovers and was reaching for a can of pork and beans in the pantry when Miss Rachel's Jesus went off in the hall. He shivered like a rabbit. He bore with fortitude her wait till I get you home. Your folks are out of their minds worrying. Was quite calm during that's all the Harris in you coming out. Smiled at her smiled at her. Reckon you can stay one night. And returned the hug at long last bestowed upon him. Atticus pushed up his glasses and rubbed his face. Your father's tired, said Aunt Alexandra, her first words in hours. It seemed she had been there, but I suppose struck dumb most of the time. You children get to bed now. We left them in the dining room, Atticus still mopping his face, from rape to riot to runaways. We heard him chuckle. I wonder what the next 2 hours will bring. Since things appear to have worked out pretty well, Dill and I decided to be civil to Jem. Besides, Dill had to sleep with him, so we might as well speak to him. I put on my pajamas, read for a while, and found myself suddenly unable to keep my eyes open. Dill and Jem were quiet, and when I turned off my reading lamp, there was no strip of light under the door to Jem's room. I must have slept a long time, for when I was punched awake, the room was dim with the light of the setting moon. Move over, Scout. Move over, Scout. He thought he had to. He thought he had to, I mumbled. Don't stay mad with him. Dill got in bed beside me. I ain't, he said. Just wanted to sleep with you. Are you waked up? By this time, I was, but lazily so. Why'd you do it? No answer. I said, what you run off. Was he really hateful like you said? Nah. Didn't you all build that boat like you were gonna? He just said he would. We never did. I raised up on my elbow, facing Dill's outline. It's no reason to run off. They don't get around doing what they say they're gonna do have the time. That wasn't it. He they just wasn't interested in me. This was the weirdest reason for flight I had ever heard. How come? Well, they stayed gone all the time. And when they were home, even, they get off in a room by themselves. What are they doing there? Nothing. Just sitting and reading. But they didn't want me with them. I pushed the pillow to the headboard and sat up. You know something? I was fixing to run off tonight because they were all there. They all were. You don't want them around you all the time, Dill. Dill breathed his patient breath, a half sigh. Good night. Atticus is gone all day and sometimes half the night, and often the legislator and I don't know what. You don't want him around all the time. Dill, you couldn't do anything if they were. That's not it. As Dill explained, I found myself wondering what life would be if Jem were different, even from what he was now. What I would do if Atticus did not feel the necessity of my presence, help, and advice. Why? He couldn't get along a day without me. Even Calpurnia couldn't get along unless I was there. They needed me. Dill, you ain't telling me right. Your folks couldn't do without you. They must be just mean to you. Tell you what to do about that. Dill's voice went unsteadily in the darkness. The thing is, what I'm trying to say is, they do get on a lot better without me. I can't help them any. They ain't mean. They buy me everything I want, but it's now. You've got it to go play with it. You've got a room full of things. I got you that book, so go read it. Dill tried to deepen his voice. You're not a boy. Boys get out and play baseball with other boys. They don't hang around the house worrying their folks. Dill's voice was his own again. Oh, they ain't mean. They kiss you and hug you good night and good morning and goodbye and tell you they love you. Scout, let's get us a baby. Where? There was a man Dill had heard of, had a boat that he rowed across to a foggy island where all these babies were. You could order one. That's a lie. Auntie said good drops him down the chimney. At least that's what I think she said. For once, Auntie's diction had not been too clear. Well, that ain't so. You get babies from each other. But there's this man too. He has all these babies just waiting to wake up. He breathed his life into him.
Oh my
Dill was
gosh.
up again. Sorry,
This is funny.
yeah. Dill was off again. Beautiful things floated around in his dreamy head. He could read two books to my one, but he preferred the magic of his own inventions. He could add a subtract faster than lightning, but he preferred his own twilight world, a world where babies slept, waiting to be gathered like morning lilies. He was slowly talking to himself to sleep and talking me with him. But in the quietness of his foggy island, there rose the faded image of a gray house with sad brown doors. Still,
All right.
why do you reckon?
Thank you, Hannah. All right,
Okay,
Hannah,
thank you.
explain to us a little bit about what you read.
Dill, she after Atticus told him like, okay, I'm just going to like tell your aunt you're here and you're going to stay with us for the night. She said, "See, I told you like, Atticus wouldn't mind, and you'll be okay with us." Then they were debating. They were discussing like they'd be on good terms with Jim since Dill had to sleep with him. But then um, Dill suddenly um, woke up. Woke up. Scout.
Scout.
Yeah, woke up Scout and got in with her, and then they got in and said he wanted to sleep with her, and then like they were discussing about why he actually ran away, and then he said like he wanted the attention of his parents, but they weren't giving him all the attention he liked. Although they gave him all he wanted, but they weren't with him all this time.
Right.
And then she says, Scout says they here in her house they need her. They can't get along without her. But then Dill opposes her and says they don't need me. They don't need him and they can get along well right without him.
Correct.
But then they joke about not joke about they Dill gets from his imagination that babies get off from somewhere and they're just waiting to be picked up. But then they joke about what Dill says to get a baby, but then Scout
Right.
says like from where, um, and then like he says they get rowed from a crossing of to a foggy island where all the babies are. You could order one as if it was just a mailbox or something.
Right. Amazon.
And then yes, and then like she says no, that's a lie, and that this is a lie. And then she says her aunt said God drops them down the chimney. That God is the one who gives them to us. They're not in any island. And at least like she says for once, her aunt is um her aunt wasn't clear about something, although she's always straightforward. Uh, and then like she says um Dill was going to sleep, and he always like prefers things his own way, not from reality, but his own world. And
Right.
it's like he's living in his own bubble and has his own air about him.
Exactly.
And then they and then quietness befolds the room, and they were about to sleep.
Right. Thank you very much, Hannah.
Thank you, Miss Lynn.
You're welcome. All right. Now we're at the very end of chapter 14. Uh, Bamika, would you like to read? Farah, Hisham?
Yes, miss.
Okay.
I start reading?
Yeah, babe.
Okay. After many telephone calls,
Wait, Farah, read the very top of the page, baby, right here. Because remember,
sorry.
Scout has a question to ask Deal.
Okay. Why do recon Boo Radleys never run off? Dill sighed a long sigh and turned away from me. Maybe he doesn't have anywhere to run off to. After many telephone calls, much pleading on behalf of the defendant, and a long forgiving letter from his mother, it was decided that Dill could stay. We had a week of peace together. After that, little, it seemed, a nightmare was upon us. It began one evening after supper. Dell was over. Aunt Alexandra was in her chair in the corner. Atticus was in his turn. Jem and I, Jem and I were on the floor reading. It had been, it had been a placid week. I had minded Auntie. Jem had outgrown the treehouse, but helped Dill and me construct a new rope ladder for it. Dill had hit upon a foolproof plan to make Boo Radley come out at no cost to ourselves. Place a trail of lemon drops from the back door to the front yard, and he'd follow it like an ant. There was a knock. There was a knock on the front of the door. Jem answered it and said it was Mr. Hecate. Well, ask him to come in, said Atticus. I already did. Uh, I already did. There's some men outside in the yard. They want to come out. They want to come out. In Maycomb, grown men stood outside in the front yard for only two reasons: death and politics. I wondered who had died. Jem and I went to the front door, but Atticus called, "Go back in the house." Jem turned out the living room lights and pressed his nose to a window screen. Aunt Alexandra protested. Just for a second. Auntie, let's see who's it, he said. Dylan took another window. A crowd of men was standing around Atticus. They all seemed to be talking at once. moving him to the county jail tomorrow. Mr. Tate was saying, "I don't look for any trouble, but I can't guarantee there won't be any." "Don't be foolish, Heck," Atticus said. "This is Maycomb." Um, said I was just uneasy. "Heck, we've gotten one postponement of this case just to make sure there's nothing to be uneasy about." "This is Saturday," said Atticus. "Trial I'll probably be Monday. You can keep him one night, can't you?" "I don't think anybody in Macomb um I'll begrudge me a client with times this hard." There was a murmur of glee that died suddenly when Mr. Linkley said, "Nobody around here's up to anything. Nobody around here's up to anything. It's that old serum brunch I'm worried about. Can't you get what is it, Heck?" "Change of venue," said Mr. Tate. "Not much point in that, now is it?" Atticus said something inaudible. I turned to Jim, who waved me to silence. Besides, Atticus was saying, "You're not scared of that crowd, are you? Know how they do when they get shin,
Shinnied.
shinned up. They don't usually drink on Sunday. They go to church most of the day," Atticus said. This is a special occasion, though," someone said. They murmured and buzzed until Auntie said if Jim didn't turn on the living room lights, he would disgrace the family. Jim didn't hear her. Don't see why you in touched it in the first place," Mr. Lindsay was saying. "You've got to lose from this, Atticus. You're oh, you've got everything to lose from this, Atticus. I mean everything. Do you really think so?" This was Atticus's dangerous question. "Do you really think you want to move there, Scout?" Bum 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 bum, and the checkerboard was swept clean of my men. Do you really think that, son? Then read this." Jem was struggled the rest of an evening through the speeches um, of Henry Grady. Link that boy might go to the chair, but he's not going till the truth is told. Atticus's voice was even, and you know what the truth is. There was a murmur among the group of men, made more ominous when Atticus moved back to the bottom front step, and the men drew nearer to him. Suddenly, Jim screamed, "Atticus, the cell phone's ringing."
Okay, all right, Farah. So summarize this for us.
The last part, or the
From
first
the
of
beginning, when the
the
men,
beginning
what
of the
what was
chapter.
happening when the men showed up at Atticus' home? See here, it says a crowd of men was standing around Atticus, and they all seemed to be talking at once. Mr. Tate
Yes,
says,
and
moving him to
they
the
sound
county jail tomorrow. I don't look for any trouble, but I can't guarantee there won't be any. What's going on?
yes, and then they found a group of men in the house,
Yes.
Miss, you can hear me?
Yes,
Miss Lynn?
yes, I can hear you.
Miss?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I
Okay.
can hear you. Miss, so a week after Dill's arrival, a group of men led by Heck Tate, they came to Atticus's house in the evening.
Correct.
And Tom Robinson moved to Maycomb jail, and concerns about the possibility of a lynch mob have arisen. And the following evening, Atticus takes the car into town, and at about 10 o'clock, Jim, accompanied by Scout and Dill.
I think you're ahead of us, Farah.
What are
Okay,
you
what's
saying, Miss?
happening here? When this group of men come to Atticus' home with Heck Tate, who is the sheriff, they're very upset, okay? And Tom Robinson is in jail, but they want him moved out because they're afraid that there's going to be trouble from this group, a bunch of people, men from, they call them Old Sarum, okay? That's the area where they're from. These people drink a lot and they like to cause problems. So they're trying to get Tom Robinson away from there because they don't want trouble there. So someone says, I think it was Link D said, nobody around here is up to anything. It's that Old Sarum bunch I'm worried about. Can't you get a change of venue? Heck Tate says. In other words, they want him to change the place for Tom Robinson. And Mr. Tate says there's not much point to it right now. All right. And Atticus says, you're not scared of that crowd, are you? And somebody else says, you know how they are when they're drunk or shittied up. All right. So it goes on to say that Link Dees tells him that he doesn't know why he took the case in the first place because he's got everything to lose. And I mean everything, he said. Atticus says, do you really think so? And this was Atticus's dangerous question. Do you really think you want to move there, Scout? And then he says to Jim, do you really think that, son? Jim would struggle the rest of an evening through the speeches of Henry W. Grady. And Atticus finally tells this crowd, Link, that boy might go to the chair. They're talking about the electric chair where they would kill Tom Robinson. But he's not going until the truth is told. And you know what the truth is. So then there was a murmur along the group of men, made more ominous or dangerous when Atticus moved back to the bottom front step and the men drew nearer to him. When Jim sees this, he's afraid and he shouts, Atticus, the telephone's ringing. He's trying to get Atticus out of the way, okay? Does everyone understand this part?
Yes, Miss Lynn.
Okay, I just want to make sure this is what's happening, all right? It says the men jumped a little and scattered. They were people we saw every day, merchants in town, farmers. Dr. Reynolds was there. So was Mr. Avery. So they're naming all the people that they recognized that was in the